Hey, what's going on, guys? So we'll be taking a look at this SI2012 professional gaming mechanical keyboard from a company called Aula. I don't know if you've heard of them before. They're pretty, I would say, well known for making budget keyboards, and if you like search for pretty cheap mechanical keyboards on Amazon, this is kind of what you'll find. This is another one of those. This keyboard is about $37, which is a pretty good price for a mechanical keyboard, and so we'll be kind of keeping that in mind during the review. But this is just the packaging that it comes in. As you can see, it's fairly nice packaging. I don't know, there's a picture of the keyboard and the Aula logo, and then on the back of the box here, we just kind of almost have specifications, and then we have a picture of the keyboard. As you can see, it's not a full-size keyboard. We don't have the numerical number pad off to the right here, so it's a, I believe, 87 key keyboard, maybe. I'm not entirely sure if I getting that correctly. I believe it's an 87 key keyboard, so it's smaller than your traditional keyboard, which is either a good or bad thing, depending on whether or not you want the numerical keypad. And then as you can see here, it is 4 color switch. We have blue, black, brown, or red. This particular one is in blue, so you will have that kind of tactile clicky feedback and things like that, which of course we'll get into. And then as you can see here, like I said, they have the kind of attempt at specifications. I wouldn't say it's a very good attempt, just because they're kind of hard to understand. It doesn't make much sense. Like it says, strength is 60 plus or minus 10 grams. I'm guessing that's talking about the actuation force, but with something like plus or minus 10 grams, that really just makes that specific specification not very useful at all, because it could be like 70 or it could be 50. However, it is technically a blue switch, so I believe that is a 50 gram switch. So maybe if it's plus or minus 10 and it's 60, then it should be talking about the 50 gram actuation force, but that is referring, and so that is probably my best bet. I'm going to guess it's a 50 gram actuation force, which is just how much strength is required to actually activate the key switch when you push on it. But I will go ahead and just kind of ignore that, I guess, because there's really not very many specific specifications about this. They're all kind of up in the air, and so you don't really know much about it, but we can just go ahead and talk about the feel of the keyboard and how it works and everything like that. So this is everything that we get in the box here. Of course, we have the keyboard itself, then we have a kind of warranty card, we have a little tool for taking off the keys, and then we have a kind of user manual. It kind of doesn't make a lot of sense because it's talking about a bunch of different keyboards. It's not for this keyboard specifically. It's kind of like, if you have this version of keyboard, then these instructions apply, but it doesn't tell you like which version of the keyboard is or anything like that. So it's kind of confusing, especially since it's all fairly broken English. So the good news is this is a plug and play keyboard, so you don't really need the instruction manual, because if you did, you might be having a hard time just understanding it, because it really doesn't make very much sense. The main thing here, of course, is the keyboard itself, and as you can see, we type on it, you can hear the clicky tactile feedback that comes with the blue switches that are inside of this keyboard. If we go ahead and take off a keycap, let's choose like the G key because it's kind of at the center. Oops. You can see we do have a blue switch revealed. I'll go ahead and zoom in on that. So yeah, that is the blue switch that you can see here. It is the same switch as underneath all of the keys, of course, and I believe this keyboard does come in like brown, black, and red as well. So if you prefer a different switch but want the same kind of affordable keyboard, I believe you are able to do that, which is nice. So yeah, you can see the blue switch we have underneath there. It is an actual mechanical switch, which is very nice. It's not like a membrane keyboard pretending to be a mechanical keyboard or anything like that. We can take the keycap off to see the actual switch revealed, which is very nice. The keys themselves have a very nice matte finish to them, so you won't have to worry about grease or dirt or things like that just kind of being very obvious on the keyboard as you would with the kind of glossy finish. So I'm very happy to have that, especially on the keyboard. I don't know why you would ever really have a glossy finish, but we do have a very nice matte finish here, and you can kind of feel the actual letter of the key, which is very nice if you're typing in the dark, because this keyboard does not have LED lighting. I believe there are versions of this keyboard that does, but this particular one does not have LED lighting. So if you are using this in the dark and you don't have the keyboard totally memorized, you can actually kind of feel what the letters are. Not totally, but it would be enough to kind of distinguish between certain letters. Like if you can't remember which of these two is the O key, you can actually kind of feel the marking printed on there, which it would be helpful in the dark. However, at the same time, I feel like because of that, the marking is going to wear off faster because it's actually risen up kind of above the surface of the key. I'm not super worried about it, but it is something to think about. It's not like engraved into the key or anything like that. It is actually kind of almost just painted on top of the key, so I feel like it will wear out fairly quickly. However, I've been using it for a while and I haven't had any problems with it so far, and it would probably take quite a while for it to actually wear out, but it is something to keep in mind. That being said, it is kind of a nice benefit, as I mentioned, to be able to actually kind of feel the letter and stuff on the actual key indicator while you are using it in the dark or something like that, because there's no LED lighting on this particular keyboard. Taking a look at the back of the keyboard, you can see that we do just have an Aula logo, and we have 4 rubber feet. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we do have these fairly large and sturdy kind of keyboard feet that come up if you wish to use the keyboard at more of an angle. They are actually fairly sturdy, as I mentioned. You can see if you put it down, it makes a very solid clicky sound, and so that is the way both of them are. So I personally enjoy using them up. So when you are using it like this, you can see that the angle of the keyboard does go up quite a bit. as compared to having them down and then the keyboard is just kind of on the ground like this. I personally, like I said, like using the keyboard feet up, and the size of them doesn't matter to me, but they are pretty big, so if you don't want as sharp of an angle, you won't really be able to choose that because there are only one set of feet that come down. The connector here is a gold-plated USB, which is kind of standard nowadays, and as you can see here, it's a fairly big connector, but it is just, yeah, and then we have a little Aula spider there and a nice little connector there. And then we do have this Velcro strap here. If you do not want to use the entire cable, or you are transporting the cable or something like that, then you can just kind of wrap this Velcro strap around the cable, which makes transporting it very easy. You don't have to worry about it getting tangled or anything like that. And like I was saying, if you have your keyboard really close to your computer or something like that, you can just kind of tie up the extra remaining cable and you won't have a giant cable sitting around on your desk because of this nice little Velcro strap, which is included and kind of permanently attached to the cable. So as I mentioned earlier, the specifications of this particular keyboard are kind of hard to read and understand just because they don't make sense and they're missing some specifications, things like that. So I'm not sure about the amount of key rollover or anything like that. I want to say it's fairly high. I mean, it's definitely high enough that I have never noticed it or had a problem with it. So it's probably at least 6. That might be kind of low for some people, but I've personally never needed to push more than 6 keys at a time. But it is definitely more than 6. I've tested that much, and so I'm not sure exactly what it is, like I said, but because they don't really give the specification out, but I'm pretty sure it's not an in-key rollover just because of how cheap the keyboard is. However, I haven't had any problems with the keyboard rollover at all, so I'm not super worried about that. And as for the actuation force, like I said, it's 60 grams plus or minus 10, so we can make it 70, which would be something I believe Cherry doesn't even make. I mean, this isn't a Cherry switch, but I'm just kind of basing it off of the Cherry switches because that is the most popular kind of switch. So, or we can make it 50, which would be exactly what blues are, and these are the blue switches, so maybe it's the same as blues. I'm not sure if the actuation force of switches is kind of across the board, but it is kind of weird if it is across the board that they would say 60 plus or minus 10. It's really not specific and kind of annoying, honestly. However, I'm just going to go with 50 because these are blue switches, and as you can hear them, they are tactile like blue switches, and if you take the keycap off, they are blue switches, and the boxes are blue switches. So maybe it's just 50. That's the kind of actuation force you are assuming. Let's just assume it's 50. However, these key switches are not made by Cherry, as I mentioned. I'm not sure what brand they're made by, of course, because we don't have a specification, but they are just nice key switches anyway. I've really enjoyed typing on them, and they feel pretty similar to Cherry's. They aren't as clicky as Cherry's, but the kind of feel and everything like that is pretty similar. The key, the clickiness kind of seems somewhat inconsistent, which is something that you can definitely notice over Cherry keyboards, just because Cherry keyboards, they'd all make like the exact same sound as you're typing, but these, it's like they are just kind of different. Like the space bar, as you can hear, it's just kind of different. So they make slightly different sounds as far in terms of clickiness goes, but I don't think it's a problem. You can still get the click and everything like that, and the whole purpose of the click is to let you know when the key is bottomed out, and so it's never really a problem just because it's kind of clicky across the board, even if the click varies slightly. Along the top of the keyboard here, we do have some kind of multifunction controls. If you're wanting to control your computer's volume or sound or something like that, we'd also have a Windows key. So if you hold function and hit F8, it will lock the Windows key in the bottom left corner, and this will prevent you from pushing it and things like that while you're playing a game, because if you have a Windows 8 specifically, it can be very annoying if you're playing a game and then you push the Windows key down here, just because it activates the start menu and it's very annoying. It's less bad in Windows 7 and Windows 10, but it is still kind of annoying if you push it and the start menu comes up. And yeah, so if you hold function and press F8, it will lock this Windows key, which is a very nice feature to have while gaming. But it is nice to see this key feature on the keyboard, even though it's a relatively inexpensive keyboard. I think that about sums it up for this SI2012 keyboard from Aula. I would definitely recommend this keyboard just because it's currently listed on Amazon for $37, which is a very good price for what it is, just because of everything you get for it. It's a pretty sturdy keyboard. I'm not worried about it breaking or anything like that, and it's really $37, which is a pretty good price. My other mechanical keyboard is like $180, and that's a full keyboard, but the switches feel like fairly similar and the build quality is fairly similar. For $37, if you are kind of on a budget and looking for a good mechanical keyboard, I would definitely recommend this one. It's probably the cheapest mechanical keyboard I've seen, and I haven't had any problems with how well it works or anything like that. So I think it's definitely a good option if you are in the market for a mechanical keyboard and you are on a budget. With that being said, if you wish to purchase your product, of course, the link will be in the description, as it always is. You can also look at the link below that to check out more of Aula's products. They have a bunch of keyboards and gaming headsets and things like that that are all relatively inexpensive. So if you are looking for that, I personally like their quality and things like that. So I'm not super worried about recommending their products because they are all relatively inexpensive and they work pretty well. So yeah, anyway, if you enjoyed this video, then a like and is always appreciated. And if you'd like to see more videos similar to this one, then feel free to subscribe. This has been Jordan for Jolt Reviews. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in my next review.